so that we're there for a couple of years. Like this year we're at the podium in Spokane, next year we are, and then in the third year we're back in Albuquerque, which is where we were last year. So
All right. Well, Albuquerque, that's you've been to Albuquerque before?
yeah, we went twice last year. We went early February, and then our indoor conference championship was there last year. That place is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's
the
it.
podium, I do have to say, for a $53 million facility, the podium is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like it's got a really great warm up area behind and under the bleachers. It's a bank track, but then it actually goes flat, so they run the 60 in the middle.
Right.
And I stood next to that bank as it went up and as it went down. I didn't hear a thing. It was wild.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, I am still a very what do you call it? A babe in the woods when it comes to all the indoor stuff because we
Hmm.
didn't have any out here in California. So
Yeah.
there was a few when I was in high school. There was the Sunkist Invitational, which has long since gone away, and then there was an LA Times Indoor.
Mm-hmm.
That was at the sports, or I want to say that the old LA Sports Arena, which I think the
Mm-hmm.
Clippers used to play at. And I had a hell of a time on both of those. They were, too cramped indoor, wood surface, so your spikes are sinking into the wood, and
Yeah.
I could not jump. I literally hated it so bad. I was like, I don't get what the attraction is, to being indoors and jumping.
Yeah.
So, and then
Well,
I heard all these great stories. So,
when it's 10, 15 degrees outside and there's snow on the ground, it's kind of appealing for us out this way.
right.
So,
Yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it. I've been watching a lot of indoor stuff on my feed, and this is what's made me both hungry to do it and curious.
mm-hmm.
Seeing kids training indoors back east, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I see the meet looks like it's being held on a basketball gym floor,
Mm-hmm.
shiny and varnished and everything. And I'm like, well, I'd just be wearing high tops and going to town, like
Yeah.
what, why wouldn't you? That looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the funny thing about indoor is every facility we go to is a little bit different. Idaho State still actually has where they hold Simplot. They have their wood track still.
Yeah.
For high jump though, they have their turf field that they use for their football team, and so they just high jump off of that. And then Weber State, which is up here in Utah, they have an indoor facility. It's a flat track. It's pretty nice. I mean, it's a good surface, but yeah, everywhere we go is just kind of a little bit different, and that
Yeah.
is kind of you just got to get used to your surroundings. That's why I always have my group like show up 2 hours early, even if you just sit
Yeah.
around for 20, 30 minutes, like get a feel for the environment, get a feel for where everything's at.
Yeah.
Because indoor is pretty hectic, like because they're usually typically held in small spaces, and so there's a lot going on.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the beast of indoor a little bit is just getting used to the feel of everything, especially high school kids coming from just all outdoor. Most of these kids maybe do one indoor meet, but I mean
Yeah.
especially California kids, it's
Right.
all outdoor, and then it's like, oh, what, we're jumping inside, like it's a little
Yeah.
funky at first, but
Might have been a little easier for Aiden since he'd played basketball at least indoors,
yeah,
right?
I think that's probably part of it is you just used to being in the gym doing your thing all the time, and
Yeah.
you're just high jumping now, so
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
for those of you that are just kind of listening and wondering who it is that I'm talking to, my name's Troy Haynes, and this is the Sky High and Flight Jump Camps podcast. We call it Raise the Bar, and Mike Ashton is my guest. This is Mike's second time. He's the let me make sure I get this right, jumps and multis coach.
Vertical jumps and multis, yeah, so
Vertical
pole vault,
jumps,
high jump, and the multis.
vertical jumps, and multis at Utah Valley.
Valley University, yep.
Utah Valley University, UVU.
Yep.
So, and yeah, Mike has been just awesome. He's an accomplished pole vaulter and decathlete, correct, in college?
Yeah, pole vault was my main one. got thrown into the heptathlon and decathlon while I was in college, and then did a myriad of different opens as well. But yeah, both of
Yeah.
those were kind of my main two.
A lot of great experience there. So, anytime somebody's done the multi-eventers, then all of a sudden I start thinking, eventually head coach long term, right? You've got just enough knowledge to be dangerous all the way
Yeah,
across.
when I was coaching at the high school level, I was kind of getting groomed to become a head coach just because, like you said, I had experience kind of across the board. But
Yeah.
this is I'm a year and a half into coaching D1 college, and to be truthful, I don't know if I ever want to be a head coach.
Yeah.
Maybe 5, 6 years down the road that'll change, but I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. There's a lot of extra work that the head coach has to do,
Yes.
so that's I'm okay with them taking care of that and me just being the assistant helping out where I can. So
I hear that. For years now, I've been coaching since 1988, which was my last year. Graduated from college, but was already done on the team, and started coaching almost immediately. And I ended up doing both football and track. Which I did. You told me, had you done a little football also?
no,
Little
football
football.
was never one of my sports. That was the one
Okay.
that I avoided, and that's why I still have a healthy knees and
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's a few screws knocked loose on me, but just played high school ball, so it wasn't too bad. But getting back into it, I did love football more, but I've found the same kind of thing to be true. I've been a head coach only twice in my career. One time as the head JV coach, even the head JV coach, and that found out that was a lot of work. Being the administrator, not
Mm-hmm.
my skill set at
Yeah.
all. So, that in football, and then just one time, actually twice, also in track and field. And yeah, taking care of all the little details and all that, and making sure everything comes off without a hitch is definitely harder than just doing your event or events. Being the jumps guy, then it's like, hey, I just roll in, we do what we do. And you need
Yep.
anything else, coach? And I roll out. So
Tell
yeah,
me where to be.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I let somebody else do all the real high level thinking for sure.
Yep. Yep. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
I think about that sometimes when they hire these guys, these NFL guys, the guys that were the assistants that
Mm-hmm.
were really good, the good play callers, the good defensive guys, and then they interview for the head job because it makes sense that you would think this guy could be an excellent head coach. Not always the case. Some of
Yeah.
those guys were way better as offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators or quarterback coach or whatever it was
Mm-hmm.
that caught the attention. Then when they get put into the limelight, and and lots of things go into that. It could be the place and
Mm-hmm.
the the cards you were dealt, players or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. Like that's why there's the Pat McAfee podcast. I watch it and he talked about his old NFL coach. Shoot, what's his name? Anyways, they kind of went through some just like NFL like coaching questions, and it was like, what does your culture look like? What would you do to help turn around an athlete with a bad attitude? Like, what would you do in this situation or this? And it's
Yeah.
like, man, a lot of that's situational, and I mean, those would be tough questions to answer, especially if you're going from one program to another and just say this is how I would do it, but
Right.
maybe the
Yeah.
GM's like, nope, that's not how we do things here, and so
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the same thing as head coaching at this level too. If you're, I mean, assistant coaching kind of as well. You gotta have kind of a game plan and an understanding of like how you're going to coach, what type of culture you're going to set up, and
Yeah.
how you're going to deal with different situations that you run into. Um, because I'm coaching for the team that I actually competed for when I was in college. And
Right.
two of the coaches that are on staff were my coaches when I was on the team. And interviewing with them was kind of interesting just because, I had grown up a lot since I
Yeah.
graduated. Had gone through some high school coaching and worked other like in the high school realm. And so I really got to see a lot of different things. And I heard this after the fact once I got hired, but the head coach, Coach Hool, was like, after I finished, he's like, "Who is this kid? Like, this is not
Right.
the kid who left our program."
Yeah.
So I'm glad for the experience I had at the high school level. It can be really tough because I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, at the high school level, I was getting pennies on the dollar now at the college level, I'm getting nickels on the dollar. So, I
Yeah.
mean, at least it's a little bit more, but,
Yeah.
it's definitely a labor of love
Yeah.
is definitely where it's at. And, that's just track and field kind of in general. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's I'm slowly discovering this after all these years. I've had a couple people say, why didn't you ever go to UCLA? And I'm like, I don't know, I just my career path, I just once I left, I kind of went and I didn't get back there. And then I had an opportunity to work at Coach Curran, Anthony Curran had
mm-hmm,
a summer camp. He was used to run the summer camps at UCLA, and he invited me to come in and do the high jump, for a week. And it was really cool, wandering on the campus and seeing the kids that they recruited and all that stuff. And at the same time, it was like, man, this is, what they want out of you and what they pay is really not the same. And,
yeah,
like you said, it would have to be a labor of love. And I literally couldn't afford it. At this point in my career, it'd be taking a huge pay cut, I'm sure. So
mm-hmm,
I'm hopeful that now that they're going to be in the Big Ten, that
mm-hmm,
when football switches over there and hopefully track, I don't know what they're going to do with that because I don't even know if they do dual meets anymore. I've been out of it for so long. We used to
yeah,
do dual meets to a point, and then sometimes, early in the season would be quadrangular meets and 3 and 4 teams mix them together. And
mm-hmm,
we had some classic duels with Oregon. I think we still have a yearly duel with SC. I don't know how they do their schedules. I'm sure things have changed quite a bit, but
yeah,
I do miss the old dual meets and everything. And but yeah, the logistics and the amount that they pay is just like, I don't know. I think it's getting to hopefully getting that football money flowing downhill.
mm-hmm,
That's like,
yeah,
because if you're going to have high level programs in other sports, you better have either a great football program and or a great basketball program to bring in some money. Because let's face it, what's track and field bringing in? Unless we've got a ton of people watching us on TV, which we don't get, and
no,
do we pack the stands? No, we don't usually pack the stands. It depends. Sometimes at a big meet, a big invitational, Mount Sac maybe, or the Penn
mm-hmm.
relays, or you might be able to still have some tradition, pack some people in, but you're not going to see any of that money. The organizers at the top are grabbing all that money.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the tough thing with track is, I mean, you can try and, raise team fees to come and join your meet. You can do this and this and this. It's really just got to be a good situation. That's something that we as a coaching staff have been looking at because we're trying to, start looking into getting our own indoor facility where we can actually host, competitions.
Yeah.
It would be one of the first ones in the state of Utah of its kind if we got a banked track. And we look across the nation and we look at Arkansas, we look at the Boston meet that just happened this last weekend, we look at Albuquerque, and we try and get the numbers and just see like, would the investment
Yeah.
of us as track coaches in our program and the UVU just in general, would it be worth it? How quickly would we make up the money if we just went in bare minimum?
Yeah.
Um, and so, those are always the things that we try and keep in the back of our mind and always looking for because, track, like you said, it's tough. Like you don't get the sponsors like you do football, basketball. I feel like in the state of Utah, track is getting better. There's definitely a lot more interest at the high school level. There's some good kids coming out of Utah from the track and field, um, realm. They're not just
Right.
going straight football or basketball anymore. And so I think it kind of starts at that level. And then as we continue to grow, that helps. But, there's the old adage of winning solves all your issues and
Right.
winning gets you what you want. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of what I mean. That's our focus is, conference championships. If we can bring in team ones, if we can bring in a lot of individual conference champions, that's what really shows, our program's growing and doing really good things.
Yeah.
I mean, our track program, we went D1 in 2008. And so that's not too long in the grand scheme of things. We're pretty a baby is,
Right.
compared to some of the other programs. And, we have a ton of different team and individual conference championships and all Americans and all that. So we've done a lot with, the small, setup that we do have. And
Right.
that's, I mean, that's track teams across the country though. You know, it's
Sure.
not just us. So we're lucky to have an indoor facility so we don't have to train out in the snow or try and find a space in the gym at the school. And
Right.
so it's, it's a labor of love. I tell my athletes all the time, I'm like, you're welcome for all the things that I did while I was here, because that's why you have what you have now. They
Right.
love to hear that. They
Oh
love to hear
yeah. Yeah.
that.
It's like in my day, yeah. The
Yeah, I try to avoid doing that as much as possible, but
yeah,
there's some times where it's like, hey, you just got to know, like, you
yeah,
should be grateful for what we have, because I signed in 2008 with UVU. We didn't have a track on our campus, so we had to go
right.
train at a high school. We didn't
Yeah.
have indoor. We didn't have a pole vault coach.
Yeah.
And so it's, at least we're taking steps in the right direction and doing good things. So
That's like the old that old Eddie, or I think it was what, Bill Cosby, that said, "Yeah, I used to walk uphill in the snow to school both ways." And I killed a grizzly bear with my loose leaf notebook, and it's like,
yeah,
yeah, you do appreciate. There was a Monty Python skit too, where they're like, my our fathers used to come home and murder us in cold blood every night, and it's like, we slept on the floor in dirt. He goes, "You had dirt? You were
yeah,
lucky," So it's
yeah.
like, yeah, but we have the same thing at Vanguard. We have, we use a local, junior college. We're using
Mm,
their training facilities. We're not going to host a home meet anytime in the future that I can see, because they have a very tiny postage stamp campus. There's
mm,
no room. I mean, I'm looking at the place now. They've got a baseball field and they've got a gym where they can play basketball and volleyball. So you guess
mm.
what the top three sports are? You're in there. I think they've got wrestling also, because you got a gym inside. So you
Yeah,
could do those. But there's no football. And so they don't have a lot of money coming in there. And then there's a little training area outside where there's like a mini track and some turf, and they have soccer practice out there. And I'm like, but I haven't seen a real soccer field. So I'm sure they play on the road all the time. And I'm just
yeah,
like, okay. And there's a tiny little weight room that's in a tent outside. So it's like, yeah, they're like, you know, I don't know. I think maybe that's we're gonna train through it and persevere despite it, and you're gonna rock and roll.
yeah.
So um
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, when I was training, and I tell my athletes this all the time too, of like, you know, it we, you can always look at Arkansas or, big schools like, where they have this awesome facility, they have pros coming all the time,
mm-hmm.
training there too. You do what you can with what you got. And it really just comes down to like your mentality of like, it doesn't matter what I have. I can still do the things that I need to do with what we've got. And
Yeah,
if there's not, and for me, it's like if we need something, I'm going to figure out a way for us to get done
yeah,
what we need to get done. Because that's one of the things I brought up from the high school level of like just being creative, of like, how am I going to get this? How are we going to work on these certain technical things in these drills when we don't have the special apparatuses that,
right.
whatever school has? Like, you just got to get creative. And, I think that when the athletes see my passion for that and the things that I'm doing to help them, they just buy into it and say, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, we're going to go out and we're going to compete and we're going to put down our best and work just as hard as everybody else,
Yeah,
even though we don't have, this or that and whatnot. And,
right.
luckily we're at the school in Utah that it's one of the fastest growing schools in the state of Utah. We have the highest, we have 45,000 students on campus. And so, a lot has changed on our campus
Wow.
since 2008, and it's grown really, really fast. And
Say
so,
so.
yeah, we're pretty fortunate in the fact that we do have the things that we do have, because I know we run into smaller programs or D2 JUCOs, and they're
Right,
like, yeah, we're this is our first time even jumping inside. We've been just doing ground drills and stuff. So
right.
it's the perspective thing of like, I could always be complaining that we need more and more and more, but
Yeah,
hopefully we get to that point. Hopefully we keep growing. We keep showing that we have a good program, and, these are the things that are going to help us take this to the next level, but we're just going to keep grinding and
yeah,
doing our thing with what we've got. And, I'm pretty excited this year. Like I said, we're going into conference championships this next week, and My 4 high jump boys are in the top, or 4 out of the top 7 spots. And 205 is probably going to be the mark to get into eighth,
Yeah.
which is really, really crazy for the conference that we're in. And it's going to be really competitive. And I told them every time, I'm like, hey, when we go to conference, doesn't matter where you train, doesn't matter, what you've done. It's 0-0. Everybody's
Yeah.
on this even playing field. We just got to go and take our spots.
There
So,
you go. That's said like a football coach. What is the when you once you get through that, so you have that's just conference, right? So
mhm.
is there an indoor national regional after that?
So for indoor, it's just straight nationals. They take top 16 in the country. And so indoor is really, really tough to get into. You have to be jumping about 220
Mm-hmm.
to be well within the top 16.
Sure.
I mean, Aiden right now has looked fairly consistent. We've attempted 215 2 or 3 times in a meet. And I think we've just been starting one, maybe 2 heights too early. And
Yeah.
so at conference, the plan is, I mean, obviously we want to get a height. We don't want to no height because we want to score points, but
Sure.
hopefully limit his jumps at lower heights so that we can get to 215 and then potentially get to 220 so that we
Can he
feel
open at 2 meters, or can he open at
yeah. I
205?
mean, we've been
Yeah.
at, I mean, we've been at 195, 190, 3, whatever the progression starts
Right.
at or hits. And he's been fair, like he's been really consistent. He first height or first jump, first jump, first jump. But I think, his stamina coming back from his 2-year LDS mission is
Right.
still getting better. And so I think, yeah, I just was after the last meet, I was like, hey, let's start at 2 meters. Like you're consistent enough
Yeah.
to hit it. Like you're getting good hip height. You're warming up at 2 meters. Like
Yeah.
let's just come in and do that. And so it's kind of the plan for him this next coming week. He tweaked his ankle just a little bit the last time we were in Spokane, but he's doing good now.
Yeah.
So just fun old stuff of high jump.
Yeah. Does he still play basketball? Does he mess around with
Nope,
basketball at all?
nope, nope,
Yeah.
nope. So at Weber, he wasn't jumping because I was just giving him some recovery, and their track does sit around a basketball gym, and he was just in there goofing off with a basketball. I was like, nope, we're not doing that. Not this close to conference. Put the
Yeah.
ball down. I know you want to shoot. I know you're not leaving the ground, but
Yeah.
you just never know. Like too close
Yeah.
to conference. He's like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure you had the same thing when I was at UCLA. We were told not to do anything, outside of what we do, and
Yep.
we broke those rules all the time. We were going down playing basketball, and
Yeah.
I stepped on some big galoot's foot one time and rolled it pretty good,
Yeah.
and I hopped on one foot all the way into the training room and stuck it right into the ice bath, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. And it was
Yeah.
there was always something dumb that you could do.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I was a big skier. I had a ski pass. I was going once a week, once every other week, just because snow here in Utah is like the best in the world.
Right.
And then once I went on an official visit to UVU, and they're like, "Okay, if you sign with us, like you're done skiing until you're done." They're like, "If you get injured, like that doesn't mean we can't cut you. That doesn't mean we can't take
Right.
scholarship money from you." And I was like, "Okay." But
Yeah.
yeah, I played basketball. I did all that stuff. I
Yeah.
know my athletes do it too. And that's why I tell them like just don't be dumb. Like that you are not the problem on the court. It's the other kids that aren't as athletic as you.
Right.
And those are the ones that are trying to live their glory days again. So just be
Yep.
careful. And that's yeah, I know you have to have some type of outside athletic thing from high jump. So just
Yeah.
be smart, don't be dumb. And
Well,
that's all I can
they're all
do.
dumb. They're all dumb
Yeah.
because I remember we used to go to both Poly Pavilion and the Wooden Center at UCLA, and I watched some of the guys that the volleyball players would go in there and play, 5 or 6 of them on a team, and playing intramurals,
Mhm.
dumbly enough, and balling. I mean, just up above the rim, grabbing rebounds, tomahawking, and
Mhm.
it was fun to watch. And I remember a couple of times thinking, man, somebody's foot gets landed on, and you're gonna have a 3-time All-American not playing because he rolled his ankle playing volleyball. I had my
Yep.
roommate was a 52.8 triple jumper, Dwayne. If you're out there, Dwayne Washington. He went to the same high school, and we were roommates as freshmen. and he used to roll around with Shane Mack, who was an Olympian, played on the baseball team, U.S. Olympic baseball team, and then was also on the Met. Or no, it was not the Mets. He was on the Twins. I know he won at least one world title playing with Kirby Puckett and those guys.
Nice.
So, and they were both outrageous athletes. And, I saw them playing in the gym one time and, up above the rim doing crazy stuff. It was just like, so nobody listened.
Yeah, it's tough because you're in the best athletic shape that you're ever going to be.
Yeah.
And you just want to kind of let things loose and just get
Yeah.
after it. I mean,
Yep.
when I was in college, I could reverse dunk from the opposite side of the key. I could
Yep.
two-hand, like, and when you've played basketball your entire life, you're just like, this is
Yeah.
when I'm at my best. So
Absolutely.
it's funny. I have conversations with them all the time of just like, don't do anything like
Don't do
early
what
in
I
the
did.
season. Yeah, don't do what I did because all of us coaches know you do it. So don't lie to me when I know you did something, but just be
Yeah.
smart. Like,
Yeah.
don't go crazy.
It's so
So,
funny. Coaching is just like parenting, right? It's like we're
oh,
just
100%.
trying to teach you to not do what we did, which was dumb, and we admit it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like I know what I'm doing because I was dumb and got hurt
Yeah.
myself. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, my high jumpers love playing basketball. My pole vaulters love rock climbing. And so it's
Yeah.
just,
Well,
you
the pole
know,
vaulters have to be. I tell everybody this. I'm wondering if you agree. I'm sure you do, but I tell all the guys that are going to pole vault, like, you have to be a little bit crazy. There's got to be some daredevil in there. It
mm-hmm.
does not attract the milk toasties. The milk toasties are going to look at the pole and think that looks really fun, but no way. There's no
Yeah.
way I'm doing that. And then you're going to get somebody who really doesn't have the right skill set sometimes, but they're like, I think I'm just going to go for it. They just go charging down there. It's like, you have to have, because high jumping, believe it or not, is a lower version of that, because there
Mm-hmm.
are some people that, after one bad experience, maybe they landed on the bar, or maybe,
Mm-hmm.
the bar gets up higher than their head. I've had jumpers that will not pull the trigger anymore. Like, they get to heights that they just won't attempt. You have
Mm-hmm.
someone run through like 4 times in a row, and you're like, hey, you got to take a jump here. They're going to time you out, and it's like,
Yeah.
and then they go, that's it. I'm done. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Well, I call my pole vault crew the cardiac kids because I've already had 2, 3 experiences so far where I've had kids almost land on the ground face first, and it's just, and that's like, as a pole vaulter myself, like that was always the time where like my brain would kick in and be like, you got to get back on the runway right now. You can't think, get
yeah,
your step, grab a smaller pole, and just, even if you miss, like take one up because it's you ride such that edge of like
right,
pushing the limit of like, this could be safe if this goes well. If anything's off, like I'm going to have to hold on for dear life to try and land on the pit. And
right,
it's, yeah, I mean, you have to have the send it mentality. Like if the pole's becoming too small, if it's not stiff enough, if you're not getting the pop off the top, that's the biggest pole you've ever jumped on at practice or in meets. It's like, okay, you got to grab the next one or else we're not doing anything. And
yeah,
I think pole vaulters do just have that, like that ability to switch the safety off on your brain and just go
yeah,
for it. It definitely takes time. You definitely have to be confident in what you're doing. And
yeah.
yeah, I have a couple of kids that one kid, before I started coaching, he actually broke his back in practice. He landed basically in the box.
Wow,
Luckily, he didn't do it bad enough where he was up walking 3 weeks later and he's still
yeah,
competing for us.
right.
But I mean, I've seen him do some stuff and just push that limit of like, oh man, this is good. And every time somebody's sitting on the mat and he's about to go, I'm like, you might want to move. Like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Oh
But I
man.
mean, he's one of those kids that he'll do that and then he's like, I'm good. Get back on
Yeah.
the pole, get back on the step, and go again. And sometimes yeah, like I said, that's why I call them the cardiac kids because I feel like the pole vault coach, as a coach, you see all worst case scenarios when they're up in the air and they're like not going anywhere, and then they land and you're like, oh, okay, we're good.
Right. Now,
So
that bringing that, me being up and coming, I'm hoping, pole vault coach, learning on the fly and
Mm.
listening to everything that I can. What do you teach your vaulters? And this is a good question, I think, for those of you out there listening to Raise the Bar. Um, what would be the thing that you would tell your vaulters, like if you get in to trouble, right? What do you do? Like, depending on the situation, is it just like hold on and pray, or what do you teach them?
To hold the pole, hold on to the pole.
Yeah.
You watch any crazy pole vault video on YouTube where somebody's doing something nuts, it's usually because they let go of the pole early.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have a multi. He is 6'3", about 205. Like he's a big boy.
Yeah.
And every time he goes up and he's getting on some stiff poles, and you know, for him it's just you wait for that pole to start to recoil and then you just throw your weight towards the mats. You know, because one time when I was in college, we were down at SDSU, so San Diego State,
Yeah.
and we were just warming up. And you know, multis are the scariest because they're, you know, not as experienced most of the time.
Right.
And so I watched this kid from BYU just go up, got stood straight up. The pole was right above the box. He let go, and his knee just went into the
Oh.
box and just blew everything out. And
Oh.
yeah, it was pretty bad.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, just holding onto that pole and trying to throw your feet and throw your weight one way or the other towards the mat so that you can
Yeah.
land safely. That's usually my first go of like, don't let go of the pole early. If you
Yeah.
have to do anything, hold on too long.
Yeah.
And then we can, you know, work on letting go earlier. But yeah, I've watched, especially at the high school level, I've watched a lot of kids just, they're on that verge of doing something not super smart. And, you know, luckily we have a lot better pole vault coaches now, a lot of athletes that are getting into pole vault coaching. It's really, I think, started to make things a lot better. But yeah, I've seen some crazy things in pole vault. I mean,
Yeah.
all the videos I get sent them all because all my family and friends know I was a pole vaulter, and so I'm
Right.
like, yeah, I've seen that in real life. Like I've seen a kid rip his hand open and, you know, blow knees out and land on the ground and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And yeah, you just
It's
have to have a
crazy.
screw loose. Yeah.
I'm a product of Long Beach Millikan High School, and Long Beach Millikan High School actually has a decent string of athletes that have gone not just to UCLA, but a lot that went to UCLA. The guy that had the school record before my teammate broke it was a guy named Rory Katinik, who was jumped 6'9" and 3/4 at UCLA or at Millikan, and then went to UCLA and was a 7.45 high jumper and a really good javelin thrower. So he
Nice.
went, and then we had the Tullys. So
Mhm.
both Mike and Steve Tully went to Long Beach Millikan. And, you know, Mike was an Olympian, and Steve, his brother, vaulted 18.2 and went to Long Beach City and still coaches locally at Los Alamitos High School. He's supposed to be a podcast guest coming up, and
Nice.
hard to pin him down. But I saw Mike when I didn't even know who he was. Had come back to school at Millikan. I had already left also. Like I said, my roommate and my Dwayne Washington both went from Millikan to UCLA also. So there was quite this group. And I saw Mike Tully come back one day because our pole vault pits were always open. And I was introduced to the pole vault as a sophomore by the coaches having the high pole vault pits out and the poles were on the ground. And that was it. Like we were like, here you go. Just run down the runway and whatever happened. And I was still like, oh, this is so much fun. And it was like, I just couldn't wait to try it. You know, I'd seen it on TV, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I can watch and copy pretty good. And we had a guy in front of me who was a 15-footer. So I was like, okay, you go, you know, like this, and just kind of hold on. So anyway, I'm watching, and I didn't know right away that it was Mike Tully, but I see this big guy come out and he's got work on, hey, that's Tully over there. Oh yeah. And within 2 vaults, he's running down, nice plant, rocks back, and the pole just explodes, right? He does 2 somersaults, lands in the pit, and everybody's just kind of watching, you know, and he gets up, kind of dusts himself off, picks up the 3 pieces of the pole, throws them over there, goes walking to his bag, slides out another pole, goes back to the
Yep.
end of the runway and goes, like this, and like
Hmm.
didn't even, even, it was like, you had the feeling like this is not the first time that's happened because
Yeah.
it was just like, oh, I guess I broke a pole, and I'm sitting there thinking, what if you landed on that thing and, like impaled yourself? And I'm like,
Hmm.
who knows? All I'm praying that's never happened, of course, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, those splintery pieces flying around. I'm like, that's got to be kind of crazy.
Yeah, and when those poles break indoor, it sounds like a gunshot. Everybody
Yeah.
just like stops, everything freezes, and it's pretty gnarly. Like it's pretty scary when that happens because yeah, you just don't know. Like once that thing breaks, it's like
Yeah.
whatever happens happens now.
Right.
Like
Who knows where the pieces are
um
going? Jagged edges.
yeah, yeah, there was a BYU girl, it was when I was vaulting, and she, maybe it was when I was vaulting, maybe it was last year, I can't remember, but she went up, broke the pole, and it vibrated so hard in her hand that it had like actually torn open her palm. Like it
Wow.
had massive cut through just because there was so much force and energy going through it, and it
Yeah.
just ripped her hand up. And I had never seen that before. I was like, that's bananas. Like,
Yeah. Right.
so I mean, but yeah, it's pole vault's one of those ones where I think that just because there's so many different variables that you know, I mean, I'm going to throw my hat in the debate of, which event is the toughest. And
Right.
I mean, pole vault's definitely got to be up there because you have so many different variables. You have the poles that you're working with, and then once you get it to outdoor, you're dealing with weather just like everybody else. And
Yeah.
it's one of those that every meet you go to, like, there's at least a good chunk of the crowd at least watching because they're like, what's something
Sure.
crazy is going to happen today. So,
Yeah. Well, when I was competing back in the dawn of time, 30 years ago, Sergey Bubka was, uh, you know, very, what I would call it, frequently breaking his own world record at the time. And I remember he was one of the Russians that was a true capitalist because he was, born in the wrong country. Basically, he was, he's a communist, but he figured out the capitalist system, which was we reward you every time you break a world record. So
yeah.
he and the other one that I remember was Vasily Alexeyev, who was the guy that used to be on the Wide World of Sports. You'd see him every week in the montage.
Yep.
Huge, super heavyweight and big fat super heavyweight. But he was like, clean and jerk guy. So he was cleaning, jerking like 575 pounds and be like up here and boom, and he would break his own world record by a quarter of, I don't know how they broke it up. I mean, he was going up by the smallest increment that he could go up because every
Hmm.
time he broke the world record, he would get paid. And so Bubka was doing the same thing. He was going up literally a centimeter at a time,
Yeah.
and extending. And he broke his own world record like an unbelievable number of times. I don't know what he got
Hmm.
to, but I think that I heard one time that both he and Alexia were trying to break their own world record like 100 times.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how track contracts work. I mean, Usain Bolt was kind of the same way. When he was
Mm-hmm.
doing his thing, you watch him run the 100 and he's looking around and slowing down the last like 5 meters, and you're like, what the, like, you could have just
Yeah.
totally like blown it out of the
Obliterated the
water. And
record.
it's
Yeah.
like, hey, let's save that for another day kind of thing. And
Right.
once
Right.
you realize how contracts and everything work, you're like, that makes sense. Like,
Totally.
got to get that cash and get that payday for sure. And you just, I think there's a businessman side of it too, of like, I'm just going to keep everybody on their toes. Like nobody knows how fast I can actually run. And so
Right.
every time I go in, like everybody's got to see, oh man, what's he going to do this time? And I think, Mondo's definitely kind of that way too, of like, he's jumped, I think he broke Bubka's record of consecutive times over 6 meters. He's like jumped 6 meters consecutively the most times out of anybody in the world,
Right.
which is wild. But um, yeah, I mean, every time he jumps, he comes in at 6 meters or just below, and everybody else is struggling to get to that. And like he had his Mondo Classic meet, and he won by like two or three heights, and he was attempting world record again. And
Yeah.
he is just he's been doing this for so long. Like I tell my athletes this all the time. The reason why he can do what he does is because he's been doing it since he can walk. Like
Right.
the way you walk and run, that's how he pole vaults. Like he just it's so natural to him, and his approach has been refined over so many years, and he's going to keep breaking and breaking and breaking. But I think it's done a really, really good thing for pole vault. It's really put pole vault on the dead center of like the stage, because I feel like every year there's more and more kids and more
Right.
clubs popping up all over. So it's yeah, pole vault's definitely evolved and changed in the last 6, 7 years since he kind of came on the scene.
He's I saw one of his vaults the other day, and for those of you out there, my guest on Raise the Bar is Mike Ashton from Utah Valley University, and he was you've been sharing a lot of videos of your vaulters and different things with me, and then I just saw on Instagram, I think it was a Mondo vault. It just popped up on my feed, which is one of the things I love about Instagram, because when I first get on there, usually something starts coming across the screen. So sometimes I'll see one of the athletes that I know doing something, or a coach or whatever. I'll see a drill. And this time I just happened to see Mondo, I think, and it was like a full slow motion of all the things that we've been talking about. And it was so slow that I literally saw each one of those 7 phases go through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and everything was perfect. You're watching going, okay, this has to happen before this, and then this has to happen before that. There's no changing the sequence. If you do one thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to affect the others like a domino. So you're like, okay, I get it now. And I shared that with a couple of my vaulters, and they were like, oh yeah, I get what you're talking about. Leave this here. It's like, because it's just so slow and going through. I'm like, okay. So the question that I had for you, I was just thinking, was with the pole vault and with the modern technology now and all the training and everything else. First of all, I know Bubka used to be, I heard that he could run like a 10 400 meters with a pole in his hands, right? Super fast. And I've heard Mondo is kind of the same. So knowing what you got going with the athletes, their size, their speed, and poles now, I'm assuming, have done nothing but get better in the last 30
Mm-hmm.
years. What do you think is the top end of somebody? How high can they go? How high can they vault?
Uh, I mean, we got to break the 21-foot barrier first, which I think Mondo is going to be the first one to do it. I think he is the one that's going to break that. And I even just this year in pole vault at the college level, it's gotten like I think there's 4 or 5 guys in the nation that have jumped over 19,
Right.
which 10 years ago, it's like there's maybe one guy pushing 19. And the
Right.
rest are like within 18, and then even 17 is like super good. But now, like just this last weekend in New Mexico, or 2 weekends ago in New Mexico, um, his name is Sondre. I can't remember how to say his Guterson. He's out of Princeton. He jumps for Norway. He's done his thing international level, and he's at Princeton, and he's a senior this year, and he jumped 4 or 5. I think it's 590, and
Wow.
it's just like like that's so wild that there's so many people, and the marks are just getting better and better.
Yeah.
I mean, even at UVU, like we've never had the level of talent in pole vault that we do now. We have guys consistently pushing over 5 meters, like multiple. We've always had maybe one guy that's been pushing over 5 and doing really well, but now we have a group of guys that are just. And I
Yeah.
think with Instagram and social media, it's just making things more available. I talk to recruits all the time and talk to high school kids all the time from like Idaho and Montana and different places. They're like, yeah, my dad, bought these old pits and we've got it set up in the barn and we're just doing some basic drills and short approach stuff. And when it's winter, I can only do 3, 4 step because I don't want to be
Yeah.
outside. So I just think the accessibility is going to push. I mean, 21 is definitely the next big like mark, but I think there's going to be some phenom coming out where there's going to jump, 20, mid 21, 22.
Yeah.
On the girls' side, there's those 2 twins out of Washington that are seniors this year. And the one sister has jumped 15-1,
Wow.
and the other has jumped 14, like 10, 14, 11. And she's the first girl ever under U20 to jump that high. And they're talking about how she's the female Mondo of like she's going
Yeah.
to go into college and win. And she's already gone unattached to like pro meets and is taking decent, places there. And
Right.
so it's just, I think, just like with high jump, the first person to break 7, then you see a bunch of people jump at 7.
Right.
4-minute mile. This last weekend at Boston, there were like 20 runners under 4 minutes at
Wow.
that meet in indoor. And so, yeah, once you see somebody just keep pushing and pushing, like it just kind of breaks that barrier and everybody else is
Yeah.
going to kind of follow. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think 21 is definitely doable in the next little bit for him.
Yeah.
It really just kind of depends on how far he wants to keep pushing. So,
This just popped in my head, but what is the deal now with poles and how they react as they get longer? Because you and I both know if you're holding on a pole and you're holding down lower, it's stiffer. So the
mm-hmm,
longer something is, and this is a logic thing too. I mean, if anybody could take something like a stick and you take a long stick and you break it, and you're like, oh, that was easy. And then
mm-hmm,
you take that half and you try to break that. It's like, that's kind of stiff, and the shorter it gets, the harder it gets to bend. So the longer these poles get, I keep picturing, well, they're not necessarily easier to bend because you can make them thicker as they're
mm-hmm,
longer, because you don't want them to just bend because then you're
mm-hmm,
flinging them all over the place. But like, because I've seen these guys that are casting off,
mm-hmm,
making 18 feet, and it looks like their arms extending down to a pole that's only like 15.6 or maybe 16 feet long, so
mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, when these poles get to 19 or 20 feet and somebody's able to, what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how that all works together
Uh,
too.
I mean, I'm not the scientist of pole vault. I'm not the physics guy,
Mm-hmm.
but there is actually some basic understanding of like a lot of times if you're like capping a pole or if you're at the very top and you're not getting it to move fast enough to vertical, dropping a grip or two down is actually going to make it a little bit stiffer, like you said, but it's going to make the speed of the pole move faster
Right.
because your speed doesn't have to travel up on such a high arc.
Yeah.
Simple layman terms for every pole vaulter coach that's out there.
Right.
um, but I mean, the speed is a big, big thing that I think a lot of high school kids are starting to realize and see. Like, Mondo, like you said, I've never seen a video, I've never seen a mark, but he can run a 10,500. Now, if that's with a pole or without it,
Right.
well,
That's still
it's,
fast.
yeah, he's still got a lot of speed. And I
Yeah.
think for him, being able to transition all of that speed into more of a vertical takeoff is what's making it easier for all these athletes to start getting on longer poles.
Uh-huh.
The top guys in the country are jumping on 5 meter poles at minimum. Um, just because you're getting all that push off the top, which is great, but you got to have a pole that's going to be stiff enough that's going to react the way you want it to.
Right.
And so I think the club coach out of Washington, who coaches the two twin girls that are the best in the country, he just did a podcast, and I saw a clip of him talking about if you want to jump to these certain heights, you got to be on these length of poles and this type of flex pole, like because you're not going to get there from jumping on a 15-foot pole.
Right.
It's just not physically possible. I mean, you can max out as much push off the top as possible, but if there's another vaulter that's getting maybe 2 feet of push as opposed to 3, like, and they're on a 5 meter pole, that's the difference
Yeah.
that's making it. And so the tough thing with poles is there's a lot of different brands out there now, and every pole manufacturer does their flex measurement of how stiff the pole is differently.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, like Spirit poles, UCS Spirit poles, those are the ones we typically use. I feel like they have the most like even bend and recoil, and the timing is very like pretty even.
Mm-hmm.
Pacers are notoriously a little bit stiffer. They're a little bit bulkier, but man, when they recoil, they recoil. And then kind of the big fad right now with a lot of high school kids is the carbon fiber like Essex poles. I think they're great. There's a lot of pros that jump on them that do obviously really good things. There's a lot of college athletes that do good things on them. Their bend is a little bit longer, but their recoil seems to be a little quicker and faster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so really it's just all about the vaulter figuring out the timing of those. Because most colleges have a brand that they stick with for the most part.
Right.
We've got a big selection of UCS Spirit poles. We have some Pacers, and then we actually have some Power Force carbons that we have. And you just got to get the timing and the feel down of every pole.
Yeah.
They're a little bit different, and then as you go up length, the timing is a little bit different. The bend is going to take a little bit longer. You got to drive into that pole a little bit longer so we
Yeah.
can move it just a little bit more. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Like right now going into conference, I've been working with my pole vaulters on like, okay, we need to be on 15-7 poles at minimum. And then my girls, we got to get to 14-foot poles just so that we can give ourselves a shot, because you guys aren't perfect every single time off the top of the pole. So you want to give yourself the best shot to
Yeah.
launch yourself up there and just give yourself a go at higher heights. So I mean, that's all the stuff that goes on in my brain when I lay down
Right.
at night and I can't go to sleep, of like, man,
Yeah.
what pole progression do we need to get on?
Yeah.
This kid's moving this pole really well. Should we take the jump to 16-foot poles? Like,
Yeah.
and then you got flex numbers you got to worry about, and just a lot.
Yeah, it's bewildering. I remember when I was watching Curran, he's one of the best I've seen and one of the few that I've seen, but I was lucky enough to be around him when he was a first year coach, and I was at UCLA my first year. So I'm a freshman coming in, and he's literally like the next step from a graduate assistant. I think they just gave him the job. I don't think that I'd have to ask him. I'm not sure if he was a graduate assistant or not, but he was the pole vault guy from that point on. I knew a lot of the pole vaulters, and I got to listen to him and his philosophies and, the explanations and everything. But, after having been there for 4 years and then leaving and not being around forever, and then finally one of the schools that I was at, I was walking by at our league finals, and some kids were pole vaulting. And I was like, the previous school that I worked at didn't have the pole vault. They were too afraid of litigation and problems with it or whatever. So, it wasn't even around. So I was like, you guys have pole vault here? And he goes, well, we have it at the conference meet. And it's only if somebody has somebody that they want to vault. And I go, oh, and I go, well, what's keeping us from doing it? And he goes, we don't have anybody that can coach it. And I go, I did it in high school. I'll coach it, And as soon as I said that, he's like, well, we could get a couple points at the conference meet. Maybe that'll help us win. I go, well, let's find some guys. So, from that point on, my other side of my brain goes, okay, you do remember that you vaulted in high school in like 1982, and it's now 2012, like 30 years later, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I remember all those things Curran told me. And then I was like, oh, Curran. So I went to some of his clinics, and what I saw there was just mind-bending for me, because he was constantly changing stuff. It's like, okay, you need to move back 4 inches, put your hand grip up 2, and blah, blah, blah. You need to get rid of that pole. You need to go find that one, that 165 go get that one. And he's just like, there's 7 people on the runway, and everyone was a different thing, and it's just constant, do this, do that. And I'd be like, okay, wait, why'd you tell him to move back? And then why is he moving up a pole? I was like, for those of you that are out there that haven't watched the pole vault or haven't really paid attention to it, it is just bewildering how many things actually go through the mind of a pole vault coach. And then, to see the thing that I really enjoy about the pole vault, watching it and having coached it just at the barest minimum levels right now, is that there's such a sense of community. When I went to CIF prelims here in California with this one vaulter that I had, he the big thing was he came in second in our league, or he either won or came in second. Well, there were 2 guys there. So he came in second. So that qualified him to go to CIF. And his best vault at that time was like 10 feet. And we go to CIF, and CIF, the opening height was like 11.6 or something, right? And so, but we'd been going consistently, I was just taking him to see Curran, basically. I mean, I was
Mhm.
his coach. And so the other days that we did stuff, we did drills that, Coach Curran was teaching me to do. So I would go, okay. And I got a pretty good eye, so I could remember the point of the drill, and we'll do this. And we just kept figuring it out. And then Chan, when this kid that I had from Irvine, he went to this meet and just had a monster meet. He vaulted 11.6, 12, 12.6. I can't remember if they were going up in 6-inch increments or 4, but he basically just kept PRing. And he went from dead last. He was the last qualifier. And if he'd have made his last vault, he would have snuck into the top 9 and made it to CIF finals, which was amazing. It was one of the
That's
best
awesome.
performances I've ever seen out of anybody. He did 5 PR jumps in a row or something. And,
Wow.
but that wasn't the big point. And I'm not trying to say that I was a good coach, because like I said, most of that was Curran. So the point is that as we were there, first of all, I've been in serious trouble my whole career for being the guy that videos, and the guy that the refs will come after saying, you can't be doing that, you can't be showing the video. Well, we're there, so I'm not videoing everybody because I'm used to getting yelled at in the high jump for doing just that. And I noticed one guy had gone through and vaulted and missed, and him and his coach are sitting there looking at his phone and obviously looking at the video, and they're like 2 feet away from the guy running the thing. And I'm going, wait. So I walk up to the official. I said, is it okay for us to show video to our athletes? He's like, yeah. Like, if they're going to possibly kill themselves, you can show them video, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
good to know. Thank you very much. And I go, does it matter where? And he goes, just try not to be in anybody's way. And I'm like, okay, that's good to know too. And
Yeah.
so when I get back there, I'm like, Chan, come here. I'm like, look at the video. And then, every time somebody would PR, everybody knew it. Like,
Mhm.
all these people would cheer. I'm like, and there's like, I don't know how many different schools there, but when you throw 36 kids together at CIF prelims, they're from all kinds of schools all over
Mhm.
the place. And they're mostly by size. They go divisions 1 through 4, and it depends on how many students you have, blah, blah, blah. It's like, there's people from all over there. I'm like, how could they know who these people are? It didn't even matter. The guy would be like, hey, that was so-and-so's PR. And I'm like, awesome. And
Yeah.
people, they just pull for each other. It's like, I'm not used to that. I'm used to, when I was jumping in high school, I knew who the other guys were, the ones that were really good. You'd go to big invites or whatever, and we'd like, hey man, what's up? And we'd talk for just a few minutes, and then it was like, man, it was game on. Like, I
Mhm.
had my
Yeah.
chair and my towel, and I would sit down, and like, I didn't hang around with everybody else and buddy, and it
Yeah.
was like I was focused on what I was doing. And I've noticed overall that's kind of changed in the last few years, but really in the pole vault, I have not seen anybody being like, and I could have just missed it, someone being kind of one of those over the top type A jerks to everybody else. But mostly I've seen just like that sense of community, like, hey, let's go for it. Maybe it's the fact that we could die at any moment, or whatever. But
Well, I think it comes from because we kind of talked about that before. Like pole vault is, I feel like it draws just a different. It's just a different crowd. Like
yeah,
I always feel like, at least when I was pole vaulting, and I've heard this before, like every pole vaulter that kind of started out back in the day was like, oh, it was that surfer kid that like just kind of didn't have anything, and he found this, and this was just his jam, and you
right.
know, and I think that all those guys are now coaching, and that's how they set it up. And yeah, every high school meet you go to, like even if a kid is just jumping like 9.6, it's their PR, like everybody goes crazy. And
Yeah,
I think it's just the nature of the pole vault community, like because a lot of kids that get into pole vault, girls mostly, they're coming from gymnastics. They got too big, they got too tall,
right.
whatever it is. They're like, this is an easy transition because this is kind of the same thing. It takes a lot of body awareness, um,
Yes.
and so they kind of have that like built-in daredevil because they have a little bit more body awareness and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Guys, I think in high school, you see somebody pole vault and you're like, okay, I got to at least give that a go and see what this is all about. And then you just get addicted to it. And,
Yeah.
it turns into this, like, you're not competing necessarily against each other. You're just competing against yourself.
Yeah.
And, I think, yeah, like you said, track has kind of taken that on a little bit more than it used to be. I remember, me pole vaulting, and probably because I came from other sports too. I always had a chip on my shoulder. I wasn't the most friendly person to talk to when I was an athlete
Yeah.
because it was like, no, I'm locked in. I'm doing this. Like, I'm gonna beat everybody. Like that was always my mentality, trying to go
Right.
and be like, I'm gonna win the meet. I don't care if somebody jumps 18. Maybe they know I got to give my best every day, you know.
Yep.
But I think now it's, you gotta they especially pole vault. It's really become like we're shooting for our best. What is your best?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really good foundation to have because then you're not trying to compare to other people as much and you don't get depressed when like, oh,
Yeah.
another kid jumped 19 feet this weekend and I'm only at,
Yeah.
14, 6, 15. But I think, at the college level, you do have to have that kind of like, especially when we go into conference championships when we're trying to win. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you gotta have that little bit of competitive like drive and that juice to be like, nah, I just need to come out and beat some people today.
Right.
But yeah, pole vault's a funky community. Like, if you ever get the chance, I haven't been. I've heard amazing things about it. It's called the Summit in Reno, where UCS Spirit is located. That's where they make their poles.
Right.
They have a big summit every single year in January. There's like 16 pits set up, and it's ranges from brand new like middle school kids that are just starting out to like elite level pros that show up, and
Yeah.
bunch of clubs from all over the country go to that meet, and it's just this big community of like we're all a little crazy, we all pole vault, like we all love this sport, and we're just all going
Yeah.
to have a good time this weekend and see what this sport just can continue to grow into. And
Yeah.
it's definitely a different crowd, but I think it's definitely good for the sport, and I think it's just making it more accessible and a little less daunting.
Right. All right. Well, hey, Mike, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to wrap up, but
Yeah.
again, you making yourself available has just been a blessing, unbelievable blessing for me.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of, I feel like we're a Utah Valley West, like
Yeah.
running through you. So, you've helped me tremendously with
Mm-hmm.
my understanding of the vault, and the kids are, appreciative of the stuff that, and I'm the first to just go, I'm not taking any credit for this. I keep shoveling it your way. So, I'm definitely a fan and disciple, and just appreciate the back and forth. So let's
Yeah.
keep that rolling, and good luck at your guys' big meet.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks. Yeah, it's been great communicating with you. I'm glad I can work through some pole vault stuff with you just for me too.
mhm.
All the high jump stuff you've been doing and all the advice and things you send me to has been great. It's just, kind of helped me out when I run into a roadblock. And, I mean, floating the idea out there. Maybe we do a camp in the summer.
I
Maybe
like
I
it.
come out to SoCal for a
Yeah,
weekend. You come up to Utah.
I like
We
it.
do our thing out here, and
Absolutely. Yeah,
we'll have to see if we can get something worked
I
out.
think that'd
But
be great. Yeah,
it's been great. I really enjoyed everything. I don't mind you sending me videos because I'm all about it. I'm the film
yeah,
junkie. So it's been
absolutely.
great to see your kids kind of get better and progress and just do their thing. So
I tell you, the Chris Watson, the kid we were talking about, the one day he made like 5 heights in a row. He's just like, and he had vaulted a little bit in high school, but we were stuck on a couple things, and then you showed me that drill that got him straightened out, and then we
mhm.
haven't tried the one yet with the lighter pole to keep
Yeah.
the arm extended, because I didn't realize, like you said, is if it's that stiff, how it, his elbow is out in front of the pole. I'm like, isn't that supposed to be here? So that's why I was asking
Yeah.
that question. I was like, but that makes sense, because what did you show me? That guy with the super bendy pole, and he's
Hmm.
going, you go here and then you just rock back. I'm like, well, yeah, that's how you demonstrate it. But I never made the connection, like, oh, well, then if we pick a little bit smaller pole, then he could actually do that. And we were just on too stiff of a pole for that, however
Hmm.
long the run was or whatever. But yeah, it's moving. It's moving along.
That's good.
Well, hey, when is the big meet? It's this next week,
Next week, we fly to Spokane Wednesday. We compete Friday, I think it's the 24th and the 25th.
and
So
that's the Big West Championships.
WAC, so
WAC,
Western Athletic
WAC.
Conference.
That's
Yep.
right. That's right. The WAC.
Yeah.
Then, and Aiden is going back for the first time since he won it. couple of years
Yeah,
ago?
going back for the first time. He was number one in the conference until this last weekend. A couple of dudes out jumped him, and I already talked to him about it. He's like, "Oh, I know. I'm upset about it. So
Yeah.
we'll settle that when we get there." I'm like, "That's
All
exactly
right.
what I wanted to hear."
Awesome. Yeah. Send me some
So
videos, man. I'll
I will.
get you guys on there, and we'll talk it up. Give me the results and all that, and we'll
Will
make
do.
a good post out of it. All
Okay,
right,
sounds
sir.
good. All
Thanks
right.
for your time
We'll
again,
talk to you
Mike.
later. Yeah,
All
of
right,
course.
bud.
You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
And that was it with Mike Ashton, my newfound friend from Utah Valley University. He is the multis and vertical jumps coach. He is working with one of my former athletes that I worked with out here, former Edison High grad, Aiden Garnett, who went to the state finals his senior year and came in sixth. And he went to Utah Valley, and he PR'd at the state meet, jumped 6'7". And then at Utah Valley, his freshman year, he jumped 7 feet at the WAC final and won the indoor championship as a freshman. But the weird thing about that is he PR'd like 3 times, and he sent me those videos, and I do believe I made a post out of that way back. So he had gone on a Mormon mission for a couple of years, and so this is actually just his sophomore year, but he's looking to repeat as champ. So wishing him the best of luck. And that's going to do it for us here on Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haynes. We look forward to talking to you again soon. My next guest is my former coach at UCLA, Steve Lang. He has been continuing to coach for all these years since I left, and he's a very accomplished coach. Does amazing things with the kids that he gets. Seems like every year I talk to Steve, he has a 6'10" or 7-foot jumper from somewhere, and just a great guy and a lot of great insights. He's good friends with John Smith, who's one of the best sprint coaches in the world. So we'll be doing a lot of name dropping and a lot of enjoying talking. So we look forward to that. And until then, this is Troy Haynes signing off. We'll talk to you next time here on Raise the Bar.